I know you want a good return on your investment for flight training without being scammed. Today, flight school scams are more common than ever before, yet students enroll in flight schools without proper inquiry. Hence, I have discussed the flight school scams, which will allow you to find out the most suitable flight school for you. I have written about 15 forms of flight school scams and how you can prevent yourself from being scammed by a flight training institute. So let us begin. 1. Underquoting price. Many flight schools today try to underquote the price of the flight training course. A dishonest flight training school will give you an attractive price quotation which is not the actual flight training cost. They will often have so many hidden costs that they do not disclose initially. Until you enroll in the flight school, only to find out your actual flight training package is a lot more than the quotation you have received. There are many costs involved in flight training. Sometimes the flight training school will quote you only for renting the aircraft and a flight instructor. Other costs involved such as taxes, airport takeoff and landing fees, exam fees, books and supplies will not be quoted in your initial price quotation. How to avoid this? When you request a flight training course quotation, clarify whether this price involves all the costs. Because you do not want to pay extra for your flight training. As flight training is already a costly course, you do not want to waste your money by being scammed. Please verify whether you have to pay additional fees on top of the quotation you have received. A good flight school will not keep hidden costs and disclose all associated expenses in your initial pilot training course. 2. Double-check the training completion date with the flight school. Most flight training schools, if not all, will promise you that you can complete your flight training in a fixed period. Completing flight training and acquiring a commercial pilot license in a fixed period is always not the case. However, it does not mean all the flight schools are trying to scam you. Some flight schools will guarantee you a time, such as 12 months, to get your commercial pilot license. However, good flight schools will also tell you the factors that may affect your flight training completion period. Factors such as bad weather, not availability of aircraft, as well as your progress, it can delay your flight training. If you understand all these factors, you will know why completing flight training in time is not always the case. Do not believe in the false promises of a flight school telling you that you can finish your training with a particular flight school for less than a year. You do not have to be in a hurry to finish your flight training. Flying is a fun experience, so take your time and enjoy it. Talk to other students from the flight school and ask how often they get a flight. Then you can judge whether this is the right school or not. 3. Will the flight school compromise safety to save money? The worst thing a flight school can do is compromise safety. A good flight school will have good flight records and never compromise aircraft maintenance. Some flight school does not have good maintenance, or they may not want to spend too much on maintenance. Having poor aircraft maintenance and not enough aircraft technicians can harm your flight training in several ways. Not having good maintenance is the reason for the bulk of grounded aircraft. As a result, your flight training will delay. Flying on an airplane that is not well maintained can cause fatality. So look at the actual aircraft in a school where students are flying. Spend some time in their hangar and talk to the technicians if they are present. If the aircraft looks like it is falling apart, it is best to avoid that flight training school. If there are plenty of aircraft mechanics present in the hangar and continuously doing a good job with aircraft, the school has well-maintained aircraft. 4. Is the Flight Institute financially capable of overcoming unexpected losses? Speaking of the maintenance technicians of a flight school, I figured out that it depends on the financial capability of a flight school. A leading flight school has good financial capability. Having sufficient funds in the flight school's account will allow them to. Good flight instructors. Have more aircraft in their fleet. Plenty of good aircraft technicians and mechanics. Well-maintained aircraft. Similarly, if a flight school is low in the budget, they will try to scam you in several ways and delay your flight training. If you visit the hangar of a flight school, you will figure out the financial capability of the flight school yourself by the look of it. Talk to the staff in the company and, if possible, talk to the flight school owner to have an idea of that flight school. Ask them how long they have been in operation. Are they planning to expand their school? Do they have plans to add more aircraft to their fleet? 5. Guaranteed flight instructor job. If a flight school promises you that they will hire you as a certified flight instructor after completing your flight training, it may be a sign of scamming you. While working as a flight instructor in the same flight school where you completed your training may be easy but not trouble-free. There are plenty of instructors in the flight school, and many qualified CFIs are waiting for the same job. Unless the current flight instructor decides to go to the airline, the company will not have a vacant position for you. If all the flight schools hire their students as their flight instructors, there will be more flight instructors than students. And I have seen many flight instructors who did their flight instructor course with a company and never got hired. I only saw them waiting in the hope of being released as a flight instructor, however, their waiting never ends. Do not believe a flight school tells you that they can guarantee you a job after completing your flight training. It is a common practice to acquire more pilot students. Avoid this kind of flight school because no flight school will hire flight instructors more than they need. 6. Overtraining students in the ground. Indeed, an intelligent pilot is always learning. However, overtraining student pilots on the ground is not necessary. A pilot student does not need to learn more than they can absorb. A good flight school will have a structured course that will teach you all the necessary lessons you need to know at your level of flight training. Learning more than necessary will overwhelm you. As a result, you will forget everything on the actual flight. The most reliable way to do so is you learn and practice in actual flight. Overtraining students on the ground can cost you more money. Because if a flight school keeps you in ground classes more, than the more you will have to pay. They may say that your instructor wants you to prepare more for the flight. Nevertheless, a good flight school will allow you to observe the ground classes of another batch to review your lessons. So a good flight school will never ask you to pay extra for overtraining. A good flight school will have friendly instructors who will willingly help you and try to share their knowledge from their experiences without you having to pay. 7. Does the school has qualified instructors? I have mentioned earlier that a good flight instructor will happily share their knowledge and guide you more without paying extra. A good flight school has experienced flight instructors. It is a fact that flight instructors often fly to strengthen more hours to step up their careers. They are here to fly to apply for an airline with sufficient hours to fulfill airline requirements. Although most flight instructors work in a flight school to build up their hours, some are willing to be good teachers or mentors. Good flight instructors will do their best to build a good pilot. A good flight instructor will be friendly and teach you excellent flying techniques regardless of young or old. So if you believe the flight school has knowledgeable flight instructors and can help you grow your flying skills, take the opportunity of flying in that flight school. 8. Are you going to flights merely for the sake of building hours? It is similar to not having good flight instructors. A good flight instructor will not only fly with you to build hours. If your flight instructor is always taking you on long cross-country flights and not teaching you anything, it is possible to change your flight instructor. If you cannot change your flight instructor, it is time to change your flight school. Going on long flights only to build hours without learning a thing is not beneficial for you. It is a sign that your instructor is flying with you only to fill his logbook and pocket. It is not exactly a flight school scam but more of an instructor's fault. However, if you do not like the flight instructor, you can complain to your flight dispatcher or talk to the chief flight instructor regarding this issue. In a good flight school, the chief flight instructor will take note of that and take action. You are investing your money and time for a bigger goal, and you must be worth your time and money. 9. Is the training institute emphasizing on accelerated flight training? Another way a flight school will try to scam you is by saying that they can enroll you for a quickened flight training if you pay them for the whole package. It is seldom possible to have accelerated flight training due to numerous factors. Due to the factors I have mentioned earlier, no one can complete their flight training in an accelerated course. Asking you to pay for the whole course at once and promising you that you will complete 50 hours of flying time within a month is a lie. Flight training relies on many factors and not just only money. Enrolling in an accelerated flight training course is not the best idea. It is just a way of flight schools to get your money at once. 10. Steep cancellation procedure. Suppose you have paid for your private pilot licensing course all at once, expecting to acquire your license quicker. Nevertheless, you are not satisfied with the flight training there, and you want to change your flight school. Now, you want to change the flight school and refund what you paid only to realize there is no cancellation policy in the flight school. It is more common than you may know. Many students sign the contract in flight schools without reading the contract paper correctly. Many flight schools have no refund policy, and some may have a cancellation fee. Read the contract and check whether if they have a cancellation policy or not. A good flight school will have a cancellation policy. You may have to pay a small cancellation fee and get a full refund of your remaining balance from your school account. 11. Did your training institute urge for additional training? It is another way flight schools scam their students by pressuring them to take additional training. A flight school may try to compel you additional aircraft ratings saying that it is necessary. On the contrary, it is just another way of flight schools to make more money. Taking additional training, which is not always necessary, will cause extra money. Do not listen to the flight school if they suggest you fly in a new aircraft unless you experience flying in a different cockpit. I have seen students taking flying lessons in aircraft that they never fly twice. 12. Are they selling books and supplies with a higher price tag than usual? Flight schools will try to sell extra books and supplies to you at a price more than its actual value. Selling books and supplies for pilots is a business for flight schools. And if your flight school has a pilot shop where they sell books with a price tag higher than usual, it is better not to buy from them. There are plenty of options to buy books online. Visit an online store or go to Amazon.com to find a book that suits your needs. You don't have to buy books more than you need right now. As well as there is the option for buying used books online, as aviation books are usually expensive. So only choose what you need and order it online instead of buying them from your flight school's pilot shop. You can read here which kits are only necessary for your initial flight training: private pilot training kits. 13. Did they ensure you will fly with one flight instructor? A flight school may promise you that you will fly with only one instructor until the end of your flight training. However, that will never happen because a flight instructor may not be available for many reasons. Your flight instructor may get a better opportunity to move there suddenly. So if a flight promises you that you will fly with one instructor till the completion of your course, then it is highly likely they are trying to scam you. Do not listen to your flight school and fly with different instructors to learn additional skills and techniques from other instructors. It is okay to fly with one instructor until you get your first solo, but after that, it is better to choose different flight instructors. 14. You are not ready to solo. Is your flight instructor delaying your first solo flight? There can be two reasons for that: either you are not ready yet for your first solo, or your instructor is delaying it to fly more with you and log his hours. If you believe that you are ready for your first solo flight and your instructor is purposely delaying it, it is time you talk to your chief flight instructor. If that is of concern, you will be assigned another flight instructor, and hopefully, the new instructor will teach you new techniques to improve your landings. Typically, student pilots get their first solo flight between 20 to 30 hours. There are also cases where a student pilot gets released for their solo flight at 60 hours. 15. Are they lying about airplane availability? Boasting about their large airplane fleet is the most extensive problem in flight schools. Flight schools will lie to you about the number of flight instructors available to fly at all times and the number of flyable aircraft they have. Once you enroll, you realize that most of the aircraft you see in the hangar has expired airworthiness. Only a couple of the aircraft is flying. A not well-reputed flight school will always lie about aircraft availability to get more students. But it is difficult for them to accommodate all the students in the aircraft available for flight. As a result, your flight training will take longer than expected. Be aware of this kind of scam. Conclusion. Pilot students usually learn about the flight school scams once they enroll. It is often impossible for a newbie to determine whether a flight school is good or bad. Therefore, reading this guide of top 15 flight school scams can help you massively. If you figure out any other way that seems to you like a fraud, then make sure to comment below and discuss it here.